Welcome to today's Talk with Erika. Thank you for subscribing to my YouTube channel as well as the audio platforms. Just to name a few, you can find today's Talk with Erika on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, Spotify, Anchor, and many others. You can find these links in the info section, and any links mentioned in the show will be posted there as well. Now, today on the show, I have Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy. This is going to be a very happy podcast as she's the host of the Business of Happiness podcast. Now, Dr. MacCarthy is also a leadership mentor and coach and a motivational speaker. She's passionate about empowering business leaders and leaders of their own dreams to strive for inner fulfillment. Dr. MacCarthy is an orthodontist and co-owner of Mbrace Orthodontics in Maine. Dr. MacCarthy coaches business owners across the globe on empowering their teams to be ambassadors of their dreams and how to redefine success to find happiness in work and ultimately their lives. That is big, to find happiness in work and ultimately their lives. It is more than a pleasure to have you on the show. Welcome, Dr. Tarryn MacCarthy.
Thank you so much for having me, Erika. It's an honor to be on your show, and thank you so much for that introduction.
You are welcome. You have a lot going on. First of all, you're a doctor, and what you do as an orthodontist, by the way, I had Invisalign. We're going to get to that in just a moment. That plays a lot. That plays a lot into happiness.
It really does.
It does. It does. We'll talk about that because it really does. But there's something I missed in the mention of your bio, and that is you mentioned that in the first decade of your career, you reveled in culturally recognizable success and drowned yourself in personal turmoil and depression. Please talk to me about what happened.
Well, that's exactly how the Business of Happiness started, Erika, is that I had lived my whole life, put my whole career as my priority and as my goal, sacrificed my 20s, if you will, which is not unusual for those of us really trying to kick off our careers. And especially in the medical and dental professions, burying your nose in the books, And what so often happens is you work so hard towards a specific goal that you think is what you want for your happiness and for the lifestyle that you want to lead. And what happened to me was I woke up one morning and I was living in the beautiful house. I had the fancy car, I had the handsome husband, and finally had the kids and had the, fancy dental practice. And I was miserable. I didn't even recognize the person who was looking back at me in the mirror. And the reason why is because I had established a whole lifestyle based on somebody else's perception of success. I was trying to achieve these goals that somebody outside of me had decided was what success looked like. And I think that so many of us end up in this place where we feel like we just are working to work, and never taking a look at our lives and deciding or choosing, or more importantly, giving ourselves permission to have a different definition of success. Just because you have the fancy car and the second home and a boat doesn't mean that you're happy. In fact, so many people who have these fancy things that society says should call you successful really are so wholly unfulfilling to many people. And I'm not saying for some people that's such a dream and they find so much inner fulfillment, but some other people just end up sitting on their boats maybe 2 or 3 hours a year because they're so busy working just to maintain this perception of success.
That is so true. That is so true. The big fancy cars, you see these big homes and you think, wow, they've made it.
Yes.
And the thing is, they're probably a hair away from having a heart attack because they're working so hard to live up to that perception.
Absolutely. And, I think one of the moments that really brought this home to me was that I came home from work one day and I was stressed out and exhausted. And as an orthodontist, we're on all day long, meaning we are smiling and being happy for everyone all day long and trying to engage. Our teenagers take up the biggest portion of our practice. Trying to engage a 14-year-old boy in conversation is not easy. Let me tell you that. But, at the end of the day, I'd been running wildly, working so hard, getting up early at 4 a.m. to go to the gym, to do all the things that I was supposed to be doing, coming home at night and either drowning myself in a glass of wine or in front of Netflix, or just shutting down, trying to escape the day and pushing from one day to the next just to make it to the weekend. And I realized one night when I kind of pushed my daughter up to bed and told her to put herself to bed, that I was giving her such a toxic identity with success, giving her such a poor idea of what success looked like. Here I was telling myself that I was showing my daughter how women can be successful in the workplace. And what I was showing her is, you force yourself to push through the day. You neglect yourself. You neglect your body. You don't even take a pee break during the day. You just neglect all those signs that your body's telling you that you're working too hard. And then at night, you drown your sorrows in alcohol or food or excessive exercise. And then you just fall into bed. And, if we look at the number of days a week that I wasn't living my life, I was just pushing through. The whole idea of hump day, it's so sad how so much of society has convinced us that that's just normal. Just keep plugging away, push through Monday through Friday so that you can live your life finally on the weekend. And what happens is we lose all ability to enjoy ourselves. So when the weekend comes, we don't even know how to do it anymore. And then on Sunday, you start stressing out again. So you don't even get 2 out of 7 days of your life to live. And I thought, I don't want my daughter to be this way. I don't want her to feel this way. The one thing we all want for our children is happiness. You ask any mom, what do you wish for your child? The first thing they'll say is, I just want them to be happy. Well, why is it that we forget to give ourselves that gift? Forget to take stock of, am I really happy? Is this really what happiness looks like for me?
Right. And it should, because they're watching that. That's why you can't say, well, I want my child to be happy. But if you're miserable and you're drunk, or you know what I'm saying? They're watching that. They're watching that. They'll be happy if you're happy. So it's kind of like when you're in the aircraft and you have the oxygen fall. You got to give it to yourself first, because you can't help other people before doing that.
Absolutely.
Same thing. It trickles down. It trickles down. You can't portray a negative attitude and expect everyone around you to be happy.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Watching,
Yeah. Yeah.
So let's talk real quickly about what are you doing now? What are you doing now to stay happy? And what do you tell folks in your podcast?
Absolutely. Thank you for asking. I realized that there were 3 permissions that really are so integral and unique to each of us, and that somewhere along the line, we forget to give ourselves permission for. So, if you look at a 3-year-old, this is the first permission. The first permission being that to dream, the permission to dream. And this is another word for this is passion, tapping into your passions. If you look at a 3-year-old playing, what she does is she's creating this whole fantasy world, and time escapes her. And she's got, all kinds of exciting characters or animals or, professions. And she's living in this dream place. And we all say, the world is their oyster. They have so many opportunities and we think they're so creative. And somewhere along the line, we forget to have that dream-like quality in our own lives. There's this perception of, I made this, I made my bed, I've got to sleep in it. This is just my lot in life. I've just got to stay right here and I got to push through. And, even in business, when you've created something and you think, well, I created this, I better stick with it now. I hate it, but now I've built this monster. And that's what I felt like in my first business, in my first orthodontic practice. I had spent, close to $1 million. I had spent 2 decades of my life trying to create this. And when I woke up and hated every day of my life, I was terrified. And what I definitely couldn't do was allow myself to dream any differently. And that is such a magical step, is just giving yourself permission to dream something better. If not this, then what could be better than this? And we get too scared to hold on to what we have, too afraid to lose what we think we have, even if it's something we don't like, just to give ourselves the opportunity to dream differently. So that's the first permission, to give ourselves permission to dream. And then the second permission is the purpose part of this, and that is to honor your own values. This is the part where I love to work with my clients to redefine what success means for you. So not what someone once told you a successful orthodontist looks like, or a successful podcaster, or a successful mom, but what does it mean to you? Mm-hmm. And what that takes is an honest evaluation of your values. You know, we all think, I have high values. We all have high values, but have you ever really sat down and written them down? And have you given yourself permission to change and grow and evolve from those values? Because my values today are wholly different from what they were when I was 22. You know, I'm not the same person. So how could I possibly hold the same values? And then the third permission is the permission to pursue. And that is just giving yourself permission to take one step forward in the direction of your passion, backed up with your purpose, with your values, and then giving yourself permission to possibly fail, possibly stumble, but to get up and try again. And I found that those three things work so well in business specifically, in relationships. You know, there have been times when I've turned around and thought, oh my gosh, I've had this relationship for 10 years with this friend of mine, and I didn't realize how abusive it was, how we were really supporting each other in a very negative way. How can this be different? Can I dream something different for myself? Let me check in again with my values. Where am I stepping outside of integrity with myself in this relationship? And then giving myself permission maybe to say goodbye to this relationship, or to address it, or whatever that step is, but giving myself permission to pursue my dreams with backing of my values.
I love that. I really love that. It's, oh my goodness. That just speaks volumes. It really does. Well, thank you for explaining that and going through that. And of course, opening a lot of people's eyes.
Yes. And it's interesting. It seems so simple, but it actually can mean something different to each of us. Mm-hmm. But it is a rather simplistic way of kind of honing in. You know, I hear a lot, well, I don't know what my purpose is. You know, what is your purpose in life? What is the direction I should go in? Mm-hmm. And I find that if you do those three things, sometimes the answer doesn't just jump out at you immediately, but by taking those baby steps in that direction, then you can start to open up more and more to your truth.
That is so true. And I like that you're mentioning a lot of people are petrified to fail. And I think that's why a lot of people stay where they are. And it's exhilarating when you fail a few times. You gotta get back up, and you know, but yeah, that's, oh my goodness. So as an orthodontist and the co-owner of Mbrace Orthodontics in Maine, you're in Maine. We're like,
yes,
total polar opposites here.
I know.
Florida, you're in Maine.
I'm envious of your shoulders here. You're exposing your shoulders in that nice warm climate.
Seriously, we've had some cold weather, by the way, but the past 2 days have been in the 80s and it's starting to warm up again. I'm hoping the cold comes back. But yes, I have been sweating in the house and it's 70 degrees in here. So
I cannot even imagine right now.
I'm sure, but I don't know. I prefer it over snow. So the two evils, right? Really hot, really cold. You say that using the techniques that you teach, Mbrace grew from a scratch start to the top 1% Invisalign provider in the country within 4 years. Mm-hmm. I want you to talk about that, but I had wanted to mention, you know, when I had seen that you work with Invisalign, that's a big thing for people to fix their smile. And I say that because I had some messed up teeth. I had the wisdom teeth push everything in. I sucked my thumb when I was young. They were really something. They weren't awful because the next habit I had was actually biting all of my fingernails off. So that was pushing them back in. but the point I'm making is that I got Invisalign in 2012 through 2013. And when that fixed my smile, you smile more. It makes you happier because you're happy to smile. You know, there's something to be said about that. You know, I'm not saying it changed my outlook on life, or maybe it did. I'm just saying, like, there's you know what I'm saying?
There's an empowerment.
There
Yes,
is. It's nicer to
there
smile
is.
now. It's definitely it did something for me. So
You know, I always say I'm the luckiest person to do what I do. I feel so grateful because it is so enormously impactful. And we treat many, many adults at Mbrace. We probably have about 30 to 40% of our patients are adults, even into their 80s, believe it or not. But the biggest portion of our practice are children and teenagers in these very formative years. And what you're talking about, Erika, is having the confidence of your smile. Imagine when you're 13, 14 years old, 12 years old in that middle school. We all remember middle school, where who you are is beginning to become established. You start creating an identity for yourself. And if you're that kid that doesn't like to open her mouth because she's embarrassed because of her smile, you start taking that on as your persona. And it is so beautiful to watch the transformation in these young teenagers when you see them gain the confidence for them to be able to, number one, smile, which we know science has shown us that if you're sad and you just activate your muscles to force yourself to smile, even if you're not feeling it yet, we start kicking off these endorphins and dopamine so that we can start actually feeling happier. But you also are braver to be able to voice your opinion and tell people how you feel because you can open your mouth and speak. And we start to see transformation in these younger kids. They start, brushing their hair a little bit differently, start sitting up a little straighter, start speaking a little bit more confidently. It's wholly transformational. And I've, also been so proud to support moms, especially, who maybe didn't have the opportunity to straighten their teeth and perfect their smile when they were younger. And they've been giving their children all that support in their years. Financially, they were always putting their kids first. All their kids went through orthodontics, and then mom comes. And it's such a beautiful gift of self-care and self-love when they've been concerned about their smiles this whole time. So, that was one of the things that my partner, Dr. Dombrowski, and I, when we were establishing this practice, we followed these 3 permissions to establish the business model for ourselves. And in our value system, our personal value system, we realized we loved empowering others. And so empowering people through their smiles, not just straightening their smiles, but making them feel empowered, that self-empowerment and self-confidence you were talking about just gives every work day a whole new meaning. When I go to work now from the same hours I was working before, I'm feeling fulfilled because I've attached the mission of my business to my personal core value. So now when I come home at night, I'm not looking for a glass of wine. I'm wholly fulfilled. I can now be present with my daughter because the whole day made me feel great because I was attaching what means most to me to my business. And that's the secret.
I love that. And it's so true. It's so true. There's nothing even more to say about that. You pinpointed it. That's amazing. How long have you been doing that, by the way? How long have you been an orthodontist?
I thought, how long have I been doing what? I've been an orthodontist since 2002. Okay. And I did have, I had a practice before this one. And as I mentioned before, it was miserable and I was terrified. I've been in that place where I see so many of my colleagues where I just feel like, or I felt like this runaway train. I was on a runaway train that I could not step off of. And I appreciate the stress and the overwhelm that can come with leadership, especially, through trying times, as we've just seen in the past year. And so I think it's even more important for us to identify the aspects that are so valuable to us and to constantly reevaluate what matters. What is important? You know, even since I opened the practice in 2016, my values have changed. And so there's this constant checking in with myself. Where am I? What do I still dream of doing? And that keeps that youthful passion alive all along the way.
I'm sure. And
Yeah.
I'm sure that when you had that turning point, when everything went, whew,
Mm.
you noticed that the people around you changed as well.
Mm. It's true. It is true. It tends to rub off on people around you. But I will say, Erika, it just as strong as a magnet as you become for positive, empowered people, people who are like-minded. You know, every magnet has two sides.
Mm-hmm.
There's the repellent side too. And so actually a lot of relationships of mine fell away. There were many relationships that just couldn't sustain this new outlook or
That'll
this,
happen.
you know, it's
Mm-hmm.
fascinating.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a reckoning I had to come to with myself, and just recognizing that everyone's on their own journey and that not everyone is in the same place as I am or ready to hear this or maybe ever wants to hear this. And just honoring that each person has that opportunity to define their own idea of success.
And it always works out, both for you, for the friendships that maybe have fallen off. It always works out because everyone finds their purpose at some point in life. Some do it earlier, some do it later. So my next question is, you talked about the podcast was born out of that dark time that you were having. How many years has that been now?
So I think it's been a progression, Erika. I think it's been a progression of understanding what was important, establishing Mbrace with these new values, and then looking around me and recognizing that so many of my colleagues were in the same place. You know, I have to share with you that in 2016, when I opened Mbrace, it was also the year that, and not many people know this about me, but it was also the year that my brother took his life. And, you know, I think that it made me realize that there was a greater purpose and legacy for Douglas's life that I needed to bring. And when I looked around at my friends who were so much more financially stable than he was, had these great opportunities, friends of mine who were literally putting smiles on children's faces every day, giving so much of themselves to their community, to their teams, you know, carrying whole teams of men and women in terms of their staff, employees, and giving them income and finance and healthcare benefits. And they were in that same low place that my brother was in, that I thought there's a greater message here. There's a greater purpose to show people that they can find happiness and purpose in their everyday lives. And what is that? And that's when the business of happiness started in my mind. It was called different things along the way, but I knew I needed to get this message out to more people so that everyone could see there was an opportunity to find joy. And, you know, it's interesting because happiness itself, using that word, people are a little bit scared of it because it seems impossible to be happy all the time. And it's true, it's impossible to be happy every minute of every day. And it's almost a bad word for some people. Some people challenge me on it and they think, really, is happiness the goal, or is it, you know, fulfillment? Or so it's a great word to use in conjunction with the word business, which has never been associated with happiness. Business has always meant, you know, trudging along and pushing yourself and striving for financial success. So it's been a journey for me trying to see how I could reach people who were searching for inner fulfillment. And it's so interesting because when you find that inner fulfillment, or you find yourself on a personal development journey, automatically the abundance around you just shows itself to you, you know, whatever that looks like. Whenever you're in a place of, stress and overwhelm, the money and the abundance around you almost seems negligent. I know so many multi-millionaires who are terrified every month, terrified every paycheck that they're not going to pay their bills. That's a reality. And it's not just a reality if you're making $2 million a year. It can be a reality if you're making $12,000 a year. The idea is just how to find that source of inner fulfillment and happiness in every day.
Wow. It's just, oh my goodness, everything you say speaks volumes. It does. People just happen to, not everyone, but many people think that the millionaires have this wonderful life and they've got it made, and it's not the case. We all put our pants on the same way. I always say that. And that goes for everyone.
It's true.
Yeah.
It's true. And I think that what you're touching on there is also compassion for one another, right? And understanding that we're all on this journey together. And I think that often when we get into that place of lack, it really triggers fear. And as soon as we become fearful, we start judging others. It's our first line of defense, well, then, she must be doing something wrong, or she must be, whatever the judgment is that you come up with. But that's our first line of defense whenever we feel a little bit insecure or fearful.
Absolutely. But I want to touch upon real quickly, because so many people idolize entertainers. Let's just say that, actors and sports figures. And I think that some people, they do. It's almost like a disease. I want to describe it like a disease, because they feel like, like, oh my gosh, they're on this pedestal. Let me tell you, they also stick their pants on the same way as you. They just happen to make a different amount of money, but they go through the same things. Like when you hear about someone in the news who, someone's going through a hard time. And I've heard people around me in, the circle, well, they have all this money. Why would they? Oh my God, they're human. It doesn't matter that they're making $12 million a month. It doesn't matter. They're human. They're human. We all feel the same way. So I think that really directly relates. And I just wanted to mention that, because I think that people don't realize that everybody is human. Unless we got clones out there I don't know about. We're all, we're all human.
Absolutely.
And so we've got the same feelings. And that's why what you're doing and your podcast and how you feel, and that's why it just works for everyone.
Absolutely.
Helping everyone, and everyone needs help, period.
Yeah.
I don't care who I just offended.
I know. But, I think you bring up a great point, because, it's not just with people who we envy or idolize and think, oh, there must be something dirty. There must be something, or they deserve it when something negative happens in their lives. Another example of that is in relationships. Have you ever seen that couple that has a great marriage and they seem to always be loving and caring for each other and so supportive of each other? And then you'll hear someone say, oh, but they're a little weird. They couldn't have found, like she's the only one who would ever have worked for them because they're both so weird. We tend to denigrate or put people down because it speaks to a little bit of fear or insecurity within us, and I think the same is true in terms of negative competition in business. Whenever we see someone who's doing a phenomenal job, we kind of find all the negative things about them and try to squash them down a little bit, instead of looking at that as inspiration, as opportunity. How can her example of success inspire me so that I can aspire to be like that, or something, my own version of that, as opposed to, let me see how many negative things I can find just so that I can feel better about myself because I haven't achieved it. That's all it is.
And that's all it is. People find these negative things, and things are said that are bad. And let me tell you, actors, actresses, anyone in the entertainment field, they've got some really thick skin, because some things that are out there, that's really hurtful. So you got to have some thick skin when you're dealing with the public. And you got to remember that it's only being said because of jealousy, and negative things are being said because they want to make themselves feel better. So you nailed that as well. It's so wonderful talking to you, because you're such an inspiration yourself, so motivational. I honestly, I look up to you so much. You're so inspiring, and I love that. And you've got a job that that, would really bring someone down. And I do want to, you were mentioning your brother. My deepest condolences, by the way,
Thank you.
Regarding that. I'm so sorry.
Thank you. I do have to just say he's been my greatest teacher. Not that, it's extremely painful and I miss him every day of my life. But I must say that in that difficult time, I learned so much about myself and about humans. And, I think if anybody else is going through this, I want to let anybody else out there know that you are not alone. There are so many resources out there. And I think that the biggest struggle we have is with shame. And that's why I'm becoming more comfortable talking about this in public, because the sooner we can let go of the shame, and the only way to do that is to voice it. Shame cannot exist if you voice it, if you let it out, because shame grows when you push it down and keep it in secrecy. And so the more we can talk about this, the more we can support one another and inspire one another to know that there is always a possibility for happiness and for finding strength and purpose. And it really starts with just that first permission, giving yourself permission to dream something differently, just giving yourself permission to say, I deserve more than this. There's something more than this. There's something bigger for me than what this is. And just allowing yourselves to have that dream sparks the first idea,
That is huge, what you just said. For people, you need to sit back and realize that there is something bigger for you. Yeah, that is huge, what you just said. I need to point everyone in your direction of your podcast, honestly. As much as I want folks to subscribe to me, no, you've got a wonderful thing happening there. And so many people need the business of happiness. They really do.
Thank you. And thank you, Erika, for your platform, because I'm sitting here thinking the same thing about you. I'm in so much admiration of what you're doing and of how you've just been able to pivot and find the silver lining as you've gone through with your career. So thank you for being an inspiration to all of us.
Absolutely. And I know I'll be on your podcast as well, but that is something that, because all of this really relates to what I did. I picked up and I had moved on and, out of what I was doing business wise. And I was sitting for a year going, what on earth can I do? How can I create? And we'll touch more upon this on your podcast, but it's just turned into something so big. It's amazing how the things you had time for before you don't have time for anymore. And I'm talking about in a good way. And we'll get, into that, but it's so different when you're working for yourself. Yes. And you just need to better yourself and empower yourself. And that's why I have folks like you on to inspire the people who follow me, because they need to understand that folks like you are out there to help them as well. Did you want to add anything else?
No, I just want to say thank you for all you do. Thank you. Thank you for being there and for offering this platform for all of us as well. I appreciate it.
You are absolutely welcome. Please remember, everyone, that any Dr. Tarryn's website, anything that we need to do to find her and her podcast, that's in the info section. Any links mentioned are in the info section where you can always find them. So thank you very much for being on with me. This really was so inspirational and motivational, and you're just wonderful. Thank you.
Right back at you. Thank you too. And have a great week. And thank you again for having me on your show.
Absolutely. You're welcome. Have a great evening. Thanks for listening to today's talk with Erika. Join me next week for another discussion with the experts who help make life easier. Please visit my website, erikadelsordo.com, where you'll find all of my social media platforms and more. And be sure to subscribe to my YouTube channel. Once again, thanks for listening.